A very good morning, students. Welcome to today's class on classification of foreign markets. Now this is the third topic that we have got in our syllabus. So when we look at the classification of the world markets of foreign markets around the world, since we are discussing the topic subject called global marketing, market for us is not just one country. Market for us is not just one continent. Market for us is the entire world. So this markets around the world, different continents and different countries, we are trying in this particular class, we are trying to understand on what basis we can classify them, right? And what is the yardstick based on which we can classify, okay? And understand how this classification works out. So we classify international markets, or we classify global markets based on four categories. On the first one, on the basis of business portfolio, we classify them. Next, on the basis of the stages of demand, we classify. Next, on the stages of development, we classify the world markets. And finally, we classify world markets on other basis. So now we'll let us see each one of them, how this particular classification works out, and how this classification is made on each of them. So now we move to the first one, that is on the basis of business portfolio. On the basis of business portfolio, we happen to divide markets into primary market, secondary market and tertiary market. Please do not mistake them for markets which we study in business environment or we study in managerial economics. This has got nothing to do with that. So in global marketing, primary market is not your agriculture or something like that. There's got nothing to do with that. So here, when we are talking about primary, secondary and tertiary, depending upon the investments, depending upon the revenue generation, we classify. Primary markets are very attractive markets. So markets, those particular markets where you invest $1,000 and you get $10,000 in return. Right, it does not mean to say the risk is less, but the risk can be contained. Now if you have good resources at your disposal and then you work out good strategies, then you can certainly contain the risk, and the returns happens to be very high returns, right? So these are that's the reason these particular markets are very attractive markets, right? Most of the primary markets that we have got today are in Asian countries, apart from previously in 3 decades back or 4 decades back, in the early stages of globalization or in the early stages of multinational era, European markets were the primary markets and then American markets were the primary markets. Now today that particular thing is slowly changing, right? Asian continent also happens to catch up, and I mean, we are proud to say, I'm proud to say that today India is classified as a primary market, right? Many multinational companies are investing. For your information, till last year, this particular this particular iPhones were manufactured in China, even though brand is owned by the United States, the Apple company, right? But the phones are being manufactured in China. Now the next phase of iPhone 11, they're going to manufacture in India, right? The plant is being shifted from China to India, so here we are going down. So today when we look at the markets around the Indian market, almost every foreign brand is available here. Previously 2 or 3 decades back, the millionaires or the billionaires in our country, they used to go to destinations like Paris, they used to go to destinations like Sydney or New York to do this particular shopping, right? And then come. Now today you need not go anywhere outside, all those particular brands are available. Can you imagine in a remote place like Kakinada, we have a brand like McDonald's, we have a brand like KFC, right? So all these particular MNC brands which were previously available only in the cosmopolitan and big cities in the world, those markets, those things are available here. That's because India is a primary market. India is a hot destination. India is that particular country where if you are investing $1,000, you will be getting back $10,000 as returns. So that's number one, primary market. The second one is the secondary market. secondary market risk is high, right? But at the same time the returns are also high. The beauty of primary markets is risk can be contained, you can overcome risk. But in case of the secondary markets, it's not possible to contain the risk, it's not possible to control the risk, right? The rate of return is high, right? But no, the risk is also high. So that's the reason it comes on the second stage as a secondary market. And the next one, the third one, is the tertiary market. In case of this particular tertiary markets, right, high risk is uncontrollable, you cannot contain the risk, cannot control this particular risk, right? And the returns are also medium, the returns are also normal, right? Very few multinational companies enter into this particular markets called tertiary markets, right? Generally what happens is these tertiary markets happen to be manufacturing markets, so they manufacture in this particular tertiary markets, but they sell this particular brands and all in the primary market and the secondary market. Most of the multinational corporations are available in the primary market and the secondary market. The reason why people don't catch up with the tertiary market or don't enter into tertiary market, the main reason is lack of political stability. Government does not have control over the law and order, right? Some thugs and all, they rule this particular country. Places like Afghanistan, places like Iraq, and there are other places where like North Korea and all, where government can do very little to protect the lives of their citizens, to protect the business organizations from terrorist organizations. So that's the reason we classify them under tertiary markets. And the next basis is on the basis of the stages of demand. On the basis of the stages of demand, we have two markets. One is existing market and potential market. Markets which are already there, that's called as existing market. Potential markets are the new markets that are opening up. Alright. Now, when we look on this particular stage, on the basis of this particular demand, European markets and American markets and India, Japan, Asia, Japan, European countries, and then American continent, they come under existing markets. Now, what are the potential markets? India, Southeast Asia, Gulf countries, South American countries, Eastern European countries, South Africa. Now, these particular countries come under the category called potential markets. And here in this particular potential markets, we again have two types: latent markets and incipient markets. Right, a latent market is that particular market which is not being tapped by this particular multinational companies. Right, might be that, but because of the cultural differences, that those particular products can be only localized. You cannot sell these particular products apart from that particular country. Right, but they have got a huge market potential. Place like India or China, where the population is more than 1 billion. So if you are able to capture the Indian market, even though you are operating in a single country, in terms of revenue, the returns are very high returns. So multinational companies come forward to tap this latent potential, to tap this particular markets which have not been explored by the domestic organizations, which have not been explored by the competitors. So here they try to create a new market by identifying the need. So they create a demand, identify this. That's what exactly this particular mineral water plants are done. Mineral water is not, we don't have in India. Now this has been injected in India by the multinational. So that's a latent market. Right, even though water is abundantly available, especially in the coastal districts of Andhra Pradesh, we are still using mineral water because marketer has very successfully convinced us to buy water. Right, so those particular things that come under the latent market. The next aspect is our incipient market. Incipient markets are emerging markets, markets which may come into picture in future, and for that organizations need to be ready to catch up. Right, artificial intelligence based markets or artificial intelligence based markets, they come under incipient. So for example, AI based products we don't have in India. The AI based incipient market, India is not an incipient market. Right, United States is an incipient market because we have got many organizations. Right, okay, there's an organization called as Tesla, which has been founded by Elon Musk. Now he happens to roll out new products. right, completely based on artificial intelligence. And since these particular countries are technologically far advanced, now customers know how to operate them, how to use this particular products. Now such markets, they come under incipient markets. Next, on the third one, on the basis of the stages of development, right, developed countries and advanced countries, we call them as industry developed economies. Countries like India, China, Southeast Asian countries, Gulf countries, we call them as developing countries, more developed or developing, right. And countries like Bangladesh and other countries in Africa, we call them as raw material, right. We extract raw material from these particular organizations, I mean for these particular markets or economies. And the fourth one is subsistence economies, right. Subsistence economies, economies that are that are dependent on other economies, right. Again, subsistence economies are those particular economies which are very poor, because government has very little to do there. Countries like Somalia, especially we find them in Africa, countries like Somalia, countries like Sudan, right. So here multinational organizations do not operate, only domestic organizations operate, government organizations operate. Now such particular economies, we call them as subsistence. Okay. So now moving on to the last category, here we have on the basis of population, classification based on the basis of population, on the basis of gross national product, on the basis of socio-economic and other factors. When we take on the basis of population, right, just having high population is not enough. Now that particular population also needs to have high purchasing power, right. Now that's what differentiates India, right. Indian market as well as Chinese market, they have, these particular markets have got very high purchasing power. Once advanced country like Japan, they in terms of purchasing power, they drastically collapsed. Today, India is in the top 3 countries in terms of the purchasing power, right. So our purchasing power happens to be very high. Why the purchasing power is very high? Because our population is very high, and this particular population has got extra income, and this population is ready to invest money. At one point of time, we showed lot of inclination towards saving money. Today we are showing inclination towards spending money. Since we are spending money on, we do not want to see, we no longer want to watch movies in a single screen theaters. We want to watch movies only in multiplexes, right. We do not want to go to an ordinary restaurants and all. Now today we have got huge craze for restaurants like KFC and McDonald's. So because of this particular rising population and money spending population, that's on that particular basis, on the basis of the purchasing power, is one classification. The second classification is on terms of the gross national product or GDP, gross domestic product also, right, which indicates the growth. The GDP or GNP, now they generally indicate the growth of an economy. So those particular economies which are having high GDP growth rates, it means to say you're investing $1, it's going to multiply by 4 times or 5 times in return. So generally organizations invest in those particular countries which have got high GDP. So that is also one particular basis for classifying the world markets. And the last one, the last classification happens to be on the socio-economic and other factors, right. So socio-economic in the sense cultural, the cultural aspects and all we take into consideration. In the socio-economic, based on the socio-economic, we divide Indian market into 5 categories. The rich class, the middle class upper, the middle class middle, the middle class lower, and the lower class, right. And in the one of the world's largest consuming classes in India called as middle class, and the population of this particular middle class in India translates roughly to 600 to 700 million. Now when we're talking about 600 to 700 million, that's huge population. The entire population of United States roughly is around 430 million, right. So 600 million population or 700 million population is like half of the continent of entire Europe, or 3/4 of the population of the entire Europe in a single country. Okay, so based on that also we happen to classify, based on this particular socio-economic factors also we happen to classify. So I end my class here. So again let us meet again on a new topic in a new class. Thank you.